For 3 decades, I have taken my seat on this bench, looking out at people from every walk of life. Over time, I convinced myself that I understood human nature. I believed I could predict what someone would do when no one was watching, boom, especially when they were pushed to their limits. I truly thought I had it all figured out, but I was wrong. Completely and undeniably wrong. One morning, a young boy stepped into my courtroom. He wasn't holding a parent's hand. Instead, he was guided in by a police officer. He wore a jacket that hung awkwardly off his small frame, clearly far too large for him, and his sneakers were barely holding together, patched with strips of gray tape. He looked no older than 10. What he carried with him, and what followed, changed the way I see the world. It stopped me cold. I remained seated on the bench, a man who had presided over countless cases, many involving fortunes and serious consequences. Yet in that moment I felt something rise in my throat. I was left without words. What that child did, and more importantly how the wallet's owner responded, is a story I carry with me every single day. By the time you reach the end of it, you'll understand why. Let me begin by giving you a sense of my courtroom, because it matters. I have served as a judge in this city for 30 years. I have seen people at their very best and their absolute worst. Every morning, I walk through those heavy doors believing one simple truth. A person's character is not defined by the amount of money they have. It doesn't matter where they come from. My grandfather arrived in this country with nothing but a worn suitcase and determination. He worked long days at the docks, lifting heavy cargo through rain and cold. He always told me, honesty is the one thing that never loses its value. I never forgot those words. He struggled, but he never took anything that wasn't his. Watching him taught me what dignity truly means. Early in my career, I learned to look beyond the surface. When someone stands before me, I ask myself what their life must be like, what circumstances brought them into that courtroom. That particular morning was a freezing Tuesday in November. The cold seemed to seep into everything. The schedule was full of routine matters, nothing unusual. Then the doors opened, and the boy walked in. His name was Leo. He had been sleeping in a subway station for weeks. His hands trembled, partly from the cold, partly from fear. In those small hands he held a leather wallet, expensive, well-made. Inside it was $10,000 in cash. Think about that for a moment. If you hadn't eaten properly in days, if you had nowhere to sleep, and you came across that kind of money, what would you do? His case was called about an hour later. This wasn't a trial against him. The owner had reported the wallet stolen, and when the police found Leo with it, they brought him in so the facts could be clarified. I looked across the room and saw the owner, Richard Sterling, a well-known real estate developer. He approached with confidence, dressed sharply, focused on his phone than the child standing nearby. Officer Miller explained that he had found Leo sitting outside in the cold, waiting to hand over the wallet. Not a single dollar had been spent. I addressed Mr. Sterling and explained what had happened. Instead of gratitude, he stepped forward, took the wallet, and began counting the money right there in front of everyone, as if he expected it to be missing. The room fell silent as he checked every bill. When he finished, he simply said, "It's all here," in a tone that carried no appreciation. I leaned forward and asked him if he had anything to say to the boy. He looked at Leo for the first time, but there was no warmth in his expression. He pulled out a single $20 bill and tossed it onto the table. "Here," he said, "get yourself something to eat." A murmur moved through the courtroom. But Leo didn't react. He didn't reach for the money. Despite everything, he stood still, his eyes steady. I struck the gavel and instructed Sterling to take his money and sit down. Then I turned my attention back to the boy. I asked him gently why he hadn't kept the wallet. He answered immediately. "My mom told me before she passed away, we might not always have food or a place to sleep, but we have our name. And if we take something that isn't ours, we lose the only thing we truly have." His words filled the room. Even the most experienced people present were visibly moved. But the story didn't end there. Officer Miller approached and handed me an evidence bag. Inside was a USB drive and a folded document that had been hidden in the wallet. When I reviewed it, I realized it was a record, evidence of corruption, illegal payments, and wrongdoing tied to Sterling's business. In that instant, Fern, everything changed. Sterling demanded the items be returned, claiming they were private. But the law does not bend for wealth or influence. Moments later, an investigator confirmed they had been building a case against him. 4. And this was the missing piece. Sterling was arrested in that very courtroom. I looked at Leo, who stood there confused and afraid. I assured him that he had done nothing wrong. In fact, he had done something extraordinary. What followed was something I will never forget. People in the courtroom began stepping forward, offering help, money, clothing. His honesty had inspired everyone. A year later, Sterling's empire had collapsed. 4. And he was serving a prison sentence, but Leo's life took a different path. Officer Miller and his wife adopted him, giving him a home and a future. Others who witnessed that day contributed to support his education. Not long ago, 4. Leo returned to my courtroom. He stood taller, more confident, with a genuine smile. He handed me a small note, thanking me and saying his mother would be proud. I placed that note beside a photograph of my grandfather. Because it reminds me every day of a simple truth. Money can provide comfort, status, and opportunity, but it can never buy character. That boy didn't just return a wallet. He reminded everyone in that room of what integrity truly means. So, if you are ever faced with a choice between doing what is right and taking an easier path, ask yourself who you want to be remembered as, because in the end, it is not wealth that defines us, it is our character.